Yeah, my earliest traumatic experience happened when I was 5 years old. But I think my working memory kicked in probably around 3.5, 4. Um, but my mother, and I had to get older to even look at my mother with grace, right? And that happened for me when I was 19. I decentralized and I said, when my mother was 19, she had one kid and was pregnant with a second, and I couldn't even imagine that for myself. And that was the first moment that I was like, I need to talk to my mom about what her life was like before I was born. Because all you know is your perspective from a child, and you like, yo, I went through a lot.
Yeah.
But so yeah, when I was 5 years old, my mom was dating a guy at the time. He was like a drug lord. And we lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? So when I say I've kind of lived all around the Midwest, and got caught up in whatever he got caught up in. And one night we are just at home. I remember we're in the living room and suddenly SWAT comes. I mean, running through our yard like with a bunch of huge assault rifles, and they just kick the door in. So it's, I'm just in shock. I don't know what's going on. And they're just pointing their guns at me, my mom, and my sister, and they tell us to all get on the ground. So we get on the ground, and I remember I'm on one side of my mom, my sister's on the other side, and they're just holding their guns, like pointing them at us. And I remember hearing my mom yell, please don't point your guns at my kids, and she kept saying it, please stop pointing your guns at my kids. But they didn't. They just, you know what I'm saying? Like they stayed right there. And like in that moment in my head, I can distinctly remember thinking like I'm about to die. Not even, and that's the thing. I don't think kids truly understand the finality of death, right? But like something in me was telling me that like, oh, I'm about to die. Like, but they were tearing up the house, they're flipping mattresses, they're pulling dressers out, like throwing everything everywhere. And then when they didn't find anything, they just left and just
Left
left
it
our
how it
home like that.
was.
Yeah, and my mom, she's just weeping, also angry. So it's like I'm watching her, because it's like, what do we do next? And in that moment, my mom, I don't think she knew like to comfort us, because her herself was still, even I think, in a very hyper reactive like type of state. And so it's like you experience that, and then the next thing is just kind of like, now we're just cleaning up and we're trying to put it back together, and then you just go on, and then you're told don't tell anybody about this stuff. So then you're just going to school the next day like nothing happened. And that was like my earliest memory and introduction to like something traumatic. And then my mother ended up staying with this person for 7 years. And so my mom was in a very abusive, like physically abusive relationship with him. So, I witnessed my mother being physically abused by this man. I witnessed, like not even witnessed, but my mother telling me not to call the police. There was a instance where one day I did, like when I just heard them fighting, and I was probably about close to 8 years old at this time, and I called the police and then I hung up. Just a natural fear response from being told so many times, we don't talk to the police, we don't call the police. But it's like also my survival part of like my instincts were like, I need to call the police to help my mom, but I'm also not supposed to. So then I hang up. Well, the police, you would call you right back. So the police call back, my mom answers, and obviously, no, nothing's going on, etc. And I was in the bathroom. I remember, and my mom comes and she like opens the bathroom door, and she is in front of him. He's behind her and he's like yelling or whatever. And my mom's looking at me and she's like, Danielle, did you call the police? And she looks me in my eyes and almost mouths to like say no, because he's behind her and he's like wilding out. And so I look at her and I was like, no. And, she looked at him and she's like, I told you she didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so there were just so many different moments and instances growing up where my safety was uncertain. And I think another moment that had such a deep impression on me, and this was the last year that my mom dealt with this dude. I was 11. We were living in Kansas City, Missouri. My mom had woke me up in the middle of the night and was like putting my coat on and telling me to be quiet. And so I'm knowing we're clearly sneaking out, you know? And so we're doing all this stuff. My mom is getting her stuff. We walk downstairs. My mom, you know, opens the door, doing everything silent as a mouse. And then we get out the door and we're walking. It's winter. It has to be winter time because I remember I was freezing. I could like see my breath. And we're walking. And then suddenly the guy, he comes out the door. He don't have on, literally, man don't got on nothing, no shoes, no nothing. He just got on his boxers. He come out the door and my mom grabs my arm and she's like, run. We take off running up the street. He's chasing us. Mind you, he don't got on no shoes, nothing. He's chasing us. We're running. And then my mom like lets my hand go and she like continues running forward. I think in her, not even a matter of I think in her mind. She told me, you know, when I had asked her why she had let my hand go, because when she let my hand go, she got much further. Obviously, she's an adult running. I'm 8. I'm a kid. I'm running. You know what I'm saying? I'm running. I'm still running. I'm watching my mom get further away from me running, and I'm running. And then like he catches me, like grabs me, has my coat. And I remember like he kind of like did like a small little jerk. And then my mom stopped. My mom stopped instantly. Because one thing I can say about my mom is my mom was always a protective woman, you know, like a fighting spirit. And so, you know, he grabs me and he like looks me dead in my eyes and he was like, tell your mom. And then it's like the darkness, because I remember like his eyes look so dark. Like I had never really seen him look like that before. And his eyes look so dark. And I think it was almost like a moment of realizing what was actually happening, because then suddenly it's like he snapped out of it and he just like let me go and he just turned around and he walked back. And then I ran up to my mom and I remember I was so distraught. I was crying and I was angry. And I was angry at my mother because I was like, you left me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And my mom had told me, she was like, I knew I had to let you go because I knew he wasn't going to do anything to you. You know, like I knew he loved you. He wasn't going to do anything to you. But like she had to create the distance in order for ultimately us to get away, type of thing. And yeah, I remember we walked, I don't know how far we walked, but we walked to like this one lady who I used to call like my Aunt Linda or something, but she wasn't really my family. And we walked to her house and like my mom used her phone. And a lot of things started changing at that point in our life. Like my mom actually really left them. We really got like our own place and stuff. My sister ended up coming back to like live with us because me and my sister, we were separated a lot. My sister would stay in Omaha with our Nana, which is my mom's mom. But I would always stay with my mom. Every time they would ask me, do you want to stay here with your grandma in Omaha or do you want to go back with your mom? I would always go back with my mom. And I believe now looking back that I was like my mother's angel. Like there was a reason that I needed to stay with her, because if I didn't, she probably would have died. You know what I'm saying? But I think I was that little buffer that was there to calm the storm just enough, you know? Because I remember another instance when we lived in Tulsa, you know, me and my mom, we were in her Jeep. I used to love her little red Jeep Cherokee. We in her Jeep, we pulled up in a driveway. The dude she was with, he pulls up behind us out of nowhere in a truck flying, just angry. He gets out his car. He has a 2x4. He gets out the car. He comes to the Jeep, smashes it into the back of the Jeep, shatters the window. Mom, put my hand down. He doesn't know that I'm in the car. You know what I'm saying? And he walks around the car and to the passenger side. And when he saw me, then he dropped the board and he like walked away. It was like, but when he saw me, it was like shock, like, oh. So, you know, it's like when I think about those moments, I'm just like, yeah, God, I think that I was meant to be there as like a guardian, you know what I'm saying, for my mom. Even though, yes, it gave me a world of trauma, you know, that I had to work through later on in life. And anger had a stronghold on me, literally up until like 2022. Like all my life, anger, pride, like because it was like a protective factor
Yeah.
for me, you know, and I was fighting a lot growing up and all of that different stuff. But yeah, man, praise God for just redemption and healing. So yeah.